Step 3, executing sample GraphQL queries. In this step, we're going to execute two types of queries against the IMBOB GraphQL API. The first one is a simple query that'll just return some movie information, and the second query is a bit more complex because it'll paginate, returning only chunks of information against the GraphQL API. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that our GraphQL Playground is up and running. And in my screen, you can see that it is, and it's authenticated. But if not, just go and click on the link on the left-hand side I'm showing you here, and that will just take you in to the GraphQL API instance running under Katacoda. So as you can see, we have GraphQL Playground running. Now let's go get a simple query. And this query is going to give us all the movies in the IMBOB data store according to title, release date, along with actors by their first and last name, and directors by their first and last name. So I'm going to click the copy icon. I click that, and I'm going to go over to GraphQL Playground. And in here, I'm going to paste the query, and as you can see, this is in GraphQL query language. It looks somewhat like JSON, but it's not. It's missing a couple key features like semicolons and commas. So let's run the query. And now you can see that the result is I have movies, and in this case you can see I have The Man Who Fell to Earth, and the actors in the movie are David Bowie, Rip Torn, etc., and the director is Nicholas Roeg. Also, I have the movie performance along with actor and director information. Dr. Strangelove, all the movies are shown. So that's it. That's a simple query. Now let's do a more complex query. So I'm going to go back to the Katacoda interactive environment. And in this case, I'm going to do a pagination query. So let me copy the query from the Katacoda instructional screen on the left side. I'm going to copy it by hitting that icon. And I'm going to open a new tab. And let's see, notice that the authentication information came over automatically. That's nice. But let's paste in that query. And in this query, I'm saying, okay, get me all the persons in the IMBOB GraphQL API, and give me the first 5 persons in the list of all the persons, and then sort it by last name. And in this case, because this is pagination, I'm going to get a different type of data structure returned. I'm going to get a data structure that tells me the pagination information, whether there is whether there's more information to be had, and this is what has next page means, and it's also going to give me the last cursor, which is the indicator in the list, where that is going to allow me to go back into the list to get the next set of names. And then it's going to return also the collection that is part of the paginated query, and it's going to give me the first and last name and ID of everybody in those first 5 records returned. So let's run the query, and you can see that in this case I am getting back 5 people in the collection: Ben Affleck, Casey Affleck, Rosalind Armstrong, Hal Ashby, and Anthony Quays. And it's also saying, look, there is more information to be had, and this is what it's meant by has next page. And by the way, the last cursor, the end cursor, which is the last person in the list, is this value, which is end cursor. And you'll notice that Anthony Quays indeed has the ID, which is the last cursor information. Now, it's important to understand that in this case of IMBOB, this GraphQL API, the end cursor happens to be the ID of the last person in the list. Different installations of GraphQL API will handle cursor definition differently. And in this case, again, the cursor definition happens to be the ID of the last person in the list. Other APIs might handle it differently. So there you go, and in the next lesson we'll take a look at some other things we can do with the GraphQL API.